Hello friends, welcome back for another video on this channel. Today I thought I might do a little tag video created by my friend Kai. They wanted to create a booktube tag for spring, and so they created the kitchen garden book tag. I will link their original video down below and also encourage you to go and check out their channel. They have a great booktube channel, but I just thought that this was a really cute tag and I wanted to join in. If you're new here, hi, my name is Lillian. I talk a lot about books and writing and creativity. And if you enjoyed today's video, feel free to stick around. You can subscribe and see more videos from me. I did attempt to do my makeup in honor of this tag. I did a little green eyeshadow. Since we are talking about plants, we're talking about herbs. Okay, so starting off we have Rosemary, a book that stands the test of time. And I'm going to take a note from Kai's video because they also mentioned this book and I definitely agree with them. And that is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This was originally published in 1899. When I read this book for the first time not too long ago, I was really blown away by Kate Chopin's writing. And secondly, I was also very much struck by how relevant a number of the themes that are discussed in this book are still relevant today. Themes like female autonomy and independence, establishing a personal identity despite societal expectations and structures of patriarchy, maintaining and also rediscovering your personal identity in the midst of motherhood and marriage, the question of whether motherhood is the right choice for everyone, and then also definitely female passion, desire, and self-actualization as a creative. Next we have Mint, a book that offered a fresh perspective, and for this one I'm going to pick Everyone on the Moon is Essential Personnel by Julian K. Jarobe. This was published in 2020. This is an incredible short fiction debut collection that dabbles heavily in speculative themes, sci-fi, flash fiction, poetry, and short stories. The publisher describes it as a collection of body horror fairy tales and mid-apocalyptic Catholic cyberpunk and a stunning exploration of queer fabulism. I was really blown away when I initially read this collection, I believe in 2021, so 2 years ago. This collection spans many genres, and each piece, along with other themes, definitely explores an overarching theme of queerness and transness in a very unique and refreshing way. If that sounds appealing to you, I would highly recommend picking up this book, although I would definitely look up some content warnings before picking it up. Next we have Basil, a book set in a Mediterranean country or written by a Mediterranean author. And for this one I have a historical fiction novel, and that is The Garden of Letters by Alison Richmond. This was published in 2014. I think I read this book back in 2017, around that time, and I just remember really adoring it. This book is set in World War II fascist Italy, and we follow a young woman named Eloise who is a cello prodigy from the city of Verona, and she gets swept up in the underground resistance movement as Mussolini's fascist government starts to take a toll on her family and the community around her. Next we have Lavender, a book like a warm, calming hug. There were a few books that I wanted to mention for this category. Most of them were books that I read and reread over and over growing up. I was a big rereader, and while these stories may not be inherently warm or comforting, they are to me just because I spent so much time reading them when I was younger, so much time escaping into these worlds with these characters. And first on that list is The Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamora Pierce. I have reread this series countless times and for the most part was constantly rereading it growing up, if not rereading this, rereading a lot of Tamora Pierce's other books. But this was the first series that she came out with back in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe, and we follow a young girl named Alana who wants to become a knight but can't due to her gender, so she disguises herself as a boy for 7 or 8 years and becomes a knight and goes and has adventures. Likewise, I also read and reread a lot of fairy tale and folktale retellings that were sort of aimed at middle grade, early YA. Things like Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine, that and any number of her books, as well as a good number of Eva Ibbetson's books I adored. There is a book that I read recently that reminded me quite a lot of the atmosphere and the style of these books that I read when I was younger, the folktale fairy tale retellings, and that is The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. It felt like the tone and the way that this story was told was very much in line with a lot of the books that I read growing up, and for that reason I found it to be very comforting and very warm, even though there are some pretty dark scenes and themes in this book. The writing is exquisite, and if you're a fan of Gail Carson Levine, Eva Ibbotson, Juliet Marillier, I think you would really enjoy this book as well. I'm not going to say anything further about it because I will be talking about it further in my monthly wrap-up, but that was definitely a recent read that I really felt was like a warm hug from my childhood. Next up we have Thyme, an underrated book, and for this one I'm gonna pick Foxfire, Confessions of a Girl Gang by Joyce Carol Oates. This was originally published in 1993, and I don't think I have ever heard anyone talk about this book in real life or online. I would consider this book an adult female companion to The Outsiders. It's set in the 1950s in a blue-collar upstate New York town, and we have 5 high school girls coming together to form a girl gang in response to a predatory male teacher. I think that this book says so much about the time and location that it is telling its story in. We see the sharp class divides, the social instability left in the wake of World War II, which is contrary to a lot of the popular history that we hear about post-World War II era in the United States. The racism that definitely existed amongst even the poorest and most outcast white girls. The power of the cult of personality, and also namely female rage. This book is simultaneously brutal but also lyrical, and it's just brilliant. It's one that definitely still bangs around in the back of my brain, and I think about it quite often actually, and I think that I definitely need to make a point of trying to reread it soon. Next up we have Cilantro, an either hate it or love it book, and for this one I'm gonna pick No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. This was published in 2021, and I think could probably pretty easily be considered a bit of a Marmite book, or in this case a cilantro book. It can be rather polarizing. This book is currently my favorite book that I have read thus far this year. I think that it very perfectly captures the ephemerality of being very online, and the way that that can shape not only your personality but also your reality as well. I will say I think that the way that this book is written, the style it's experimental, it's not necessarily for everyone, or it won't necessarily be everyone's cup of tea. And likewise, if you aren't entrenched in internet culture, I think that the vast majority of that book will kind of go over your head. Nevertheless, I was very deeply moved by that book, and I felt like a new person after having read it. So for me, it was definitely a book that I loved. And the last category we have is Bergamont, Started Bitter but Ended Sweet, a book that you were unsure of but ended up liking. And for this one, I'm going to say The Grace Keepers by Christy Logan. This was published in 2015, and I think when I read this, I think probably around 2016 or 2017, it was really my first encounter with speculative fiction that didn't really have any ties to fantasy. And initially that kind of threw me for a loop, and I was a little bit unsure of it, but as I continued to read, I fell more and more in love with the characters and the world, and just the way that Christy Logan was writing the story. This book takes place in a world that is covered by water, and we are following 2 women, one who is a gracekeeper or a gravekeeper for a sea burial ground, and another who is a circus performer on a traveling circus boat that goes around and gives performances. And we follow both of them as their narratives start to collide, and the encounters that they have with each other start to change one another. Again, another book that I probably really need to reread soon here. But that is it. That is the Kitchen Garden book tag. If you are interested in doing this tag, I would highly recommend doing it. It was a lot of fun, and I will tag you if you need someone to tag you. Kai said that this tag was intended for both BookTube as well as Instagram. So if you would prefer to do this tag over on Instagram, feel free to do so. Just use the tag Kitchen Garden Book Tag. But that is it for me, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did so, feel free to give it a thumbs up. It helps my channel grow. I really appreciate it. Again, if you're new here and you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and stick around for more. I hope you all are doing well, and I will see you in my next video.